You're watching Moms Matter on Focus TV Network, and we have a very special guest in the studio today, Mallika Chopra, who's a mom and an entrepreneur and a speaker and a writer whose book, Living with Intent, we're going to talk about today. So Mallika, welcome to the studio.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you here. I just finished reading your book on my journey to Europe, and I just loved how honest and beautifully written it was.
Well, I think other moms relate to it. You know, we all are balancing many things in our lives. We're trying to achieve things for our families, for ourselves. And a few years ago, as I was in the midst of all this, I found myself having a complete meltdown, being like, you know, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Why am I always tired and exhausted? And then almost forgetting actually the reasons why. So intention is about who we aspire to be. And this book really is about my rediscovering many of the lessons I learned when I grew up. People know my father, Deepak Chopra, and rediscovering meditation, really thinking about balance and purpose. So that's the goal.
Well, you were so honest because you said how in your early 20s you worked at MTV, and that's really a dream, right? For most 20-year-olds, like incredible. And then you said how you started getting these awful stomach pains, and you really listened to your inner voice and realized, you know what, this really isn't your life's purpose.
And, you know, that is always an interesting story for me because I remember I was at 23, 24 years old, could go to any party I wanted to. I met my husband at the first ever rave in New Delhi.
Love it.
It was really living this amazing life. And one day, driving in the streets, we got stuck in a traffic jam where we saw, in the midst of a slum, the poorest of the poor children. And they were watching music videos on TV in a shack that was on a roadside stall. And I remember having this moment thinking, why am I doing this? And what do I want to do in my life? And it took me back actually to my childhood when my dad would ask my brother and I things like, who am I? What do I want? How can I serve? And so I always say my brother and I are really not like what people think the Chopra kids would be like. And, you know, even my job at MTV was somewhat like that. But it really took me back to asking questions about who I wanted to be.
But that's incredible to really be able to listen to your voice and make that change. And then everything kind of opened up for you.
It did, but I would also say I didn't know what would happen. So there's also the living with uncertainty. And that's where techniques like meditation and mindfulness and asking yourself questions, actually being uncomfortable sometimes of not knowing the answers. And what I've found is that in my life, I go through different points where that happens again. So when I was pregnant, 5 months pregnant with my first daughter, 9/11 happened, and I ended up, because of a long story, in the hospital just to monitor my baby. And I remember listening to her heartbeat and once again thinking about, oh my God, I'm going to become a mother. I'm bringing an innocent soul into a world that actually has a lot of pain and suffering. And that made me question again. And then the impetus for this book was actually, I was speaking to an audience about being present, mindfulness, meditation, living with purpose. And as I was talking to this audience, I was thinking, oh my God, I just had that double macchiato and chocolate chip cookie. I feel so sick. I have to get the dry cleaning, turned in the permission slip. And I realized I was talking about one thing and really having another dialogue going on. And so that was another moment of insight.
And I think that happens to us as moms, that we're constantly multitasking and like really finding that time to be present and to focus, and which comes back to your book about having intentions and like, how do you find those intentions? And you really talk about how they're based on love, self-love and love for others to really bring your intentions to fruition.
Yeah, so another lesson that my dad taught my brother and I when we were young is he'd ask us, what do you want? There was a phrase he'd make us say. It says, I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience and set the goals I will achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. And he'd ask us as kids, what do you ask for? So we'd ask for tickets to the Celtics, to Hawaii, things like that. And then he'd say, okay, but what about asking for love? connection, inspiration, a sense of purpose. And so that idea of setting intentions which represent our deepest desires for who we aspire to be is a thread that's kind of stayed with me in my life. And I find that particularly in these crazy times, and particularly, us as working mothers, as non-working mothers who are also, managing our families and our homes, we're constantly stretched. And I think we also often feel guilty. We don't have this ability to say no. And so there are many kind of things that I had to think about that I'm dealing with in my life that I'm struggling with.
Well, you talk about guilt, and you talk about this in your book, which I love. You say that guilt and worry, and I'm a Jewish mother, so my guilt is like tremendous.
Yes.
But guilt and worry and the toxicity of it, you saw it, the toxic cocktail of guilt and worry.
Yes.
How do you get rid of the toxic cocktail of guilt and worry?
So it's easier said than done, and I will not say that I have achieved that at all. But I think it begins with first taking care of ourselves, because we have to nurture ourselves if we're going to nurture all these other people. And that's one thing that I realized in my life. I had stopped kind of taking care of myself because I was so busy trying to take care of everyone else, thinking I didn't have enough time. But of course I had time to like surf Facebook and do other things, but I had lost the time to meditate, to exercise, etc. So I think first we have to take care of ourselves. And in that taking care of ourselves, really recognizing what's right for us. And so the guilt is an interesting one. Like I used to feel guilty because I didn't volunteer enough in school. And one day I just realized, you know what? Hot lunch, like it's not serving me, it's not serving my kids, nobody cares. Why can't I just say no?
Yes, you're right.
And it was like one of those things that it seems kind of silly, but like that was a really transformational decision.
But it is.
Yeah,
it's huge.
It's huge.
It's
and
huge.
it just kind of finally letting go of like my need to do that was really like just kind of a release. And so I think we do it small steps, create big changes. And so it really begins with small steps.
Okay. And there's a line in here, which is my ultimate favorite quote that you say, and you write here, the wisest thing I can do is celebrate who I am at this stage of my life rather than worry about who I'm going to be when my girls leave home. I think every mom watching right now can relate to what you're saying. I know I feel it.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
And it's interesting you say that because my daughter is a junior, and when I wrote that, I wasn't so close to her kind of getting ready to leave college. Right. But yes, I mean, if I think about who I was in my 20s versus my 30s versus my 40s, now approaching 50, I could have never imagined I'd be where I am today. And so we can't anticipate. We really have to live in the moment. We have to serve ourselves and those we love in the moment and the best that we can. Yes. And that's really what I'm trying to do.
And you are doing it. And this book I really think is so helpful. And I thank you so much for being here on the show with us today. Mamas, get out there, pick up this book. Honestly, it's so great to just have next to your nightstand when you're going to bed at night. There's little tips on meditation, how to live with intent, how you teach your kids how to live with intent. So Mallika, thank you so much for being here with us today. And our next episode with Mallika will focus on her new book. So stay tuned for the next episode. And we'll see you guys next time right here on Focus TV Network.